What's up, everybody? Welcome out to our 6 o'clock live stream. We're happy to have you. We have some cool stuff to talk about tonight. We are going to talk about the
vicious corporate takeover.
Your words, not mine.
Yes, that is not the opinion of the channel.
But we definitely have some cool stuff to talk about tonight. We're going to run over a couple of things to clean up our plate real quick, and then we're going to get right into the information. We have a ton of info to go over tonight, so we don't want to spend too much time screwing around at the beginning. We want to get right into it. You know, uh, First and foremost, for anybody out there that participates, have a happy, safe St. Patty's Day tomorrow. If you've not done so already, because I know a lot of people did it yesterday and day before or today, I guess.
Yeah, I was down in Philly last night. There was a lot of St. Patty's going on.
Yeah. So, but it is officially tomorrow. So, if you're out there celebrating, make sure you're staying safe. That's all. Then the other thing I want to get into is we're going to talk about some conventions that are coming up, and then we'll jump right into it. So, you ready to rock this thing out, dude?
Sure. Yeah. Rock and roll.
All right. So, first thing I want to get off the plate is conventions. So, next week is the Skindustry Tattoo Expo up in Allentown, PA. I will be there walking around. Just double check and make sure.
Production team said Buck's mic is quiet.
Yeah, so something is wrong with my microphone. How about now? Wow. How about I fix this? So why don't you talk real quick, Justin?
So in August, the Pagoda City Tattoo Convention, which is somewhere near Reading, I think. Yeah, Reading, if you're local, is having the last convention ever. And if you've never been there, it's like out of the way, and it's really, really old school convention with really, really good artists. If I was in a couple hours distance of it, I would definitely go because it's a good time. A couple years ago, I think Doubleman from Spider Murphy's came out, and Jason McAfee, Todd Noble came out. I mean, it was good stuff.
All right, I think I'm fixed now. So appreciate the heads up on that.
Thank you to the production team.
Thank you for filling the void for me. Hey, shit happens sometimes. So, but yeah, so Skindustry next weekend, Allentown, PA. I will be there. There are a bunch of old school guys that are going to be there: Crooked Ken, Ron Delacqua, Shane Enholm. So yeah, it's going to be cool, man. I'm going to be stopping up and checking that out on Saturday. I will be there. The next thing up that we have on our list for conventions is the Tattoo Expo. It's Tattoo Socialite Arts Festival. It's an all-female arts festival that's going to be happening in Florida. I believe it's Miami. You can look it up on their page, though. It's October 12th or 10th through 12th in Florida. 160 artists. So
definitely a small convention.
Yeah, I think it's going to be more just all female. I don't know about vendors and all that other stuff. I don't have a lot of information on that. It was given to me by Frankie Scorpion, who used to own an all female tattoo shop in Philly.
What if I dress up as a girl?
Sure, why not? I mean, you can go. Anybody can go.
No, I mean to work there. What if I dress up as a girl?
Man, look, I don't want to touch that either because that might, And then last but not least,
go strong woman.
Just to announce again that I will be there for the Reno Tattoo Lady Luck Tattoo Expo in Reno.
I'm too poor to go.
May 30th through June 1st, and I will be doing interviews and live streaming the whole time. There's going to be plenty of updates going to be posted on Instagram, not only by Lady Luck Tattoo Expo, but I will continue to post as well. And the list just keeps growing to a lot of top tier older generation guys, which is what I'm excited about. So sounds like it's going to be a good time. If you're anywhere near Reno or you can make it to Reno, come out, say hello, hang out with me for a little bit. I'll have stickers, other merch. We'll see what we got. So we're going to get into the story of supply. This actually was brought up to me by a few different tattoo artists. So this isn't necessarily my opinion or Justin's opinion as we get into this today. Uh, this is apparently a concern that's happening throughout the tattoo craft. Not everybody's complaining, just concerns. The main concern would be the fact that there's a large corporation that is buying some of the mom and pop supply companies. We're going to get into the list of who they've bought already, but I think the concern is they're worried about, if you look at history, you look at Walmart. Walmart moves into your town, all your mom and pop stores kind of go away. Home Depot moves into your town, your mom and pop hardware stores go away. I think that is the concern. There's also other things and factors that go into the concerns, and we're going to get into that in a second. But what we wanted to do, did I? What we wanted to do was we wanted to get into some of the previous historical supply companies. Okay.
Well, supply companies and artists that just sold equipment, because there was both.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Or maybe, sold equipment, I guess would be the right thing to say.
So if you look, like, historically at the beginning, and I'm not saying the very beginning, but in the
In the
early
beginning,
days, in the beginning of
Ugnock,
time,
Ugnock sold the first sharpened shark teeth.
you had Charlie Wagner, who pretty much had his little thing put together,
Who would send you broken machines?
and then
Not broken, disassembled machines.
he had Jonesy that was working with him, who went on to, Jonesy machines became like the prized thing for a while. You also had Percy Waters, um, had his little thing set up. There was also Lou Alberts, Lou the Jew Alberts. Somebody actually in the comments the other day watched the Wagner video and was like, please, please, please do Lou Alberts video. So I promised them, if I could find enough, I can get the information. If I can find enough B-roll to make it interesting, so it's not just me standing there on the camera talking about it,
Lecturing, yeah.
I'll do it for hands down. Anybody, any artist that I can do that for, I'm in. It always comes down to, can I make it? Can I get enough B-roll to make it interesting? That's all that matters. Because attention spans are short these days, and if you don't flash something within 7 seconds, people click off.
What?
So, which sucks, because you know what? I really enjoyed doing the Tattoo Tony exhibit with his Jersey Shore Tattoo Museum, and if you haven't seen the video, please go watch it. He's got some really cool stuff, but I don't know if it just wasn't fast paced enough, or if people just blew by it or whatever. But it didn't get a lot of views, and it's a shame, because the dude has a lot of really cool stuff in that museum. I know some of our hardcore listeners watched it and they were like, "Oh man, I'd love to come down there." And to anyone that comes to Jersey to check that out, if they want to go check that out, please let us know before you go, because I will meet you there. I'll go hang out with you.
Or you can stop by my shop.
Or you can stop here. So Tattoo Tony is an awesome dude to hang with. And that museum is really cool. And he's got a lot of stuff. So that thing is going to be, it's going to be way bigger than what it is right now.
What
Let's
was
just
your
put it that
favorite
way.
piece down there?
I'd have to say that that O'Reilly machine was really cool to see. I think some of the flash, which I didn't put on the video, was pretty impressive as well. He does have flash that is signed by Ernie Carafa and Paul Rogers in the back wall. But there's a lot of really cool stuff that he has that just was like, wow, okay, cool, man. But so going back to this, um, you know, George Burchett talks about his, machine, getting it from Tom Riley, who, there's discrepancies with that story as well. But then Samuel O'Reilly had the patent, so there were definitely early people that had supply companies when they figured out that they were able to make needles and bars and machines and mixed pigments and whatnot, and it was a thing that they could do to make extra money on the side. Selling flash. Flash comes along a little bit later, I think, but
I would say that the early guys primarily sold machines.
yeah,
Because if you talk to guys like RC, he talks about making their own needles and tubes and stuff.
But there was I
Like
know
with the
that
intent.
Lau talked about there was the one company, actually Tattoo Doug talked about it too, where it was like there was like really two companies where you could get needles from. One of them was from over in England. Um, so then they would have to make their own needles with the
Pins.
box of pins.
Yeah, the pins.
200 or 500 count.
With the needle jigs.
Yeah. So then you go into the era of Zeiss, right? We talked about Zeiss 2 weeks ago. You know, he was a pretty big supply guy for a lot of the older generation of artists. Matter of fact, Cliff Raven got his stuff from Milton Zeiss, and then Cliff Raven started the Chicago Tattooing Supply Company, or I think that's what it's called. I believe it's still actually in business. And then you get into Percy Waters, and then you get into Spalding and Rogers, and we're going to share some cool stuff. Justin was nice enough to dip into his collection to give you guys some pictures of some stuff that he had, and we'll get into that. We'll do that now.
Sure, absolutely.
All right, cool. So this first one, the Unimax.
Okay, so
Rubino, right?
Oh, so Unimax was Wes, and Technical Tattoo Supply was Reno. Reno was Rubino.
Okay.
So this was probably early 2000s. I know for a fact Unimax is still going. I've actually been in the Unimax brick and mortar store where people have come in and been like, "I want 3 needles and a half an ounce of ink," and yeah.
Okay.
So that was New York.
And the Dermographics.
Dermographics outside of Tom's River. I can't think of where it was. That was New Jersey. Usually, if you were semi-involved in tattooing and you needed a job, they'd let you work in the solder room.
So it's Lenoka Harbor.
Lenoka Harbor, yeah.
Who owned Dermographics?
I'm not sure.
Okay. Next up is
Philadelphia's own.
Yeah, United Tattoo Supply.
United Tattoo Supply with Philadelphia Eddie and Penny. That went through a couple of changes. It was United. Later on, it became Tat Supply. Logan, still running a storefront place out of Middletown, I think.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then the next one up that you had for us.
Okay, so this was a big thing. The guys like even Zeiss, who had a pretty established company. I mean, he was advertising in magazines, but in the classified section.
Right.
Spalding was the first guy to get the big glossy page ads, whether it was Tattoo Magazine, Easy Riders, In the Wind. I mean, you would see big ads. And that's why people had such, they had a problem with him.
Right now, like National, for instance, who you have a picture of in here. We'll have to flip through them, but I know that they were like, putting ads in like Billboard magazine and some other like random, like the little ads though.
Right. And the thing with National is you had to be vouched for.
Right.
Spalding would sell to anybody. Spalding actually sold me my first kit. But yeah, National, somebody needed to make a phone call and say that this guy's all right.
And then the next one up is just a slew of different Spalding magazines.
No, those are supply catalogs.
I mean, that's what I meant.
Yeah, so he glossy, bright, big. I mean, for a while, I would say that first Spalding and Rogers and then later Spalding, they dominated the supply business. I mean, they were the one.
And then
so those are two of my favorite possessions. Those are two vintage Spalding and Rogers catalogs. The one is from the 80s and the other is from the early 90s.
Is that the 35th anniversary edition or something like that?
There's a thing on the cover, yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, that one has fallen apart so bad it's held together with like a clip. And there's the National.
Okay.
The national convention or national convention. Jesus.
So let's get into that though, real quick, and then we'll get into the rest of this. So National was owned by Philadelphia Eddie's sister,
Right. So originally Eddie owned it.
right, and then he sold it to his sister.
I don't know if he sold it to Flo or he gave it to her.
Okay, well, either or, she wound up with it.
And I think that, RC went into that. Like Flo was more business minded than Eddie was.
Right.
And she was just like, you gotta give it to me. Like there's a really famous story about Eddie. Eddie was in Vegas and he was losing money. And he took the last of his money, came back to Philadelphia, went to all of his tattoo shops and shook down his artists. Like, what do you got in your pocket right now? Collected all that money, right, and then went back out to Vegas. Well, so that might not be the guy that you want to be in business with.
Eddie also took a lot of chances with trying to open up different, shops in different areas or whatever. And him and Dominic Chance opened up the first tattoo shop in 29 Palms, which is still open till today. I don't know who owns it, but that shop is still open. And he realized real quick that it was like a gold mine for them. That shop in 29 Palms, they were literally sleeping on a cot in the back room, taking turns sleeping on the cot, because when those guys came, into port or what, not port, because 29 Palms is in desert, but I guess when they would get a new bus load or they would get a leave pass, let's put it that way, man, they would have like a huge line of people and they would like tattoo nonstop.
So even when I worked over near Fort Dixon McGuire Air Force Base during Desert Storm, a guy would come in and be like, "We're leaving. We're going in country in 3 days," and they actually had to like sort of sneak over. They would sneak over in groups of 2 or 3s, but the deal is that you had to tattoo all 14, 15, 20 of them.
Right.
And I mean, they were all cashed up and they got big pieces.
So at that point, you just got to take advantage of it.
Yeah.
Not taking advantage of the person, it's taking advantage of the
situation.
amount of business.
I
mean, it makes sense, man.
I would drive up to the shop some days and they'd be waiting at the door, 3 or 4 guys, and I mean, I would just duck down and go to get some lunch.
Right on. So we wanted to start off this tonight with the.
Isn't there another one?
No, that was it. There was only 7 of them.
I didn't send you the mom and pop one. All the small companies like Bickney and. No. So with National, I didn't send this picture because I'm dumb. So with National and Spalding, at the same time, there were like there was Superior Tattoo Supply, there was Kingpin Tattoo Supply, Joe Kaplan had a supply place, Tommy Tattoo had not Tommy Tattoo, Tommy Gunn had a supply place, Papillon. But these were shops that were just making stuff themselves and putting stuff out. They weren't just exclusive supply houses.
Right on. So Sarah with the $5 super chat. Thank you, Sarah. So we wanted to do the history part of this first and then kind of get into this story because it's more current. And like I said, there were a multitude of different artists that asked me about possibly doing a story on this subject. I was a little hesitant because I don't want to make any bad blood, but I felt like it was worthy of looking into. So we're going to get into it tonight. We're going to talk about it. We're going to try to stay as neutral as we possibly can, even though there's going to be some of these things that we're going to talk about tonight that Justin might have strong feelings about, or I might. So we're just going to try to keep it neutral as possible. And then in the middle here, we'll give some shout outs to the people that are hanging with us tonight. So this way, you guys are still in the conversation. So you ready to do this?
Yeah. So the reason that we put this stuff up was to sort of illustrate that primarily tattoo supplies have been small, sort of regional companies. Like Bickney is going to be out there in the Midwest in Ohio, Superior and Cam are in California. We have the 3 or 4 places on the East Coast.
Right.
And yeah.
You even have guys like John Entwistle from Australia. That tattoo company's still going.
John Entwistle?
Not the bass player from The Who, but it was Johnny Dollar's Whistle Stop Tattoo Supplies in Australia. It's in Melbourne, depending on I guess where you're from, and that's still going. But to Justin's point, though, it was all mom and pop kind of places that were ran by tattoo artists for tattoo artists.
Absolutely.
This is where it gets a little dicey, and I'm gonna actually Bill O'Connell with the $10 super chat. Thank you, Bill.
So a perfect example of that stuff is what we were talking about before we went on air. So prior to Chinese needles, right? The blister pack Chinese needles that are across the board, right? I mean, you had to peel your pins off your needle bars, and you had to use needle jigs.
Mhm.
You know, so you could buy the pins and the needle bars, but I mean, and it was just something that's been lost, and it was like a huge change. And it sort of reflects the change that's happening now.
Right.
Like guys that are a couple years older than me, they all know how to solder their own pins. It wasn't necessary by the time I got into it in the mid 90s.
Mhm.
You could just, send away.
So the company that we're referencing here is a company called Nexus, and
Doom, doom, doom.
they're a global supply chain company, but they have a like subsidiary. It's called Nexus Brands.
So primarily medical and beauty supplies, correct?
Close.
Close.
Yeah, they are.
And when I say medical supplies, I mean like gloves and that sort of stuff, not medical equipment.
So it's crazy, man, because they are this big company that has tattoo supply stuff, dog grooming supplies, and beauty supplies. It is this umbrella that covers quite a lot of different products that have nothing to do with each other.
Hmm. Diversification.
Now, they've since acquired some tattoo companies that fall under the Nexus umbrella. Kingpin Tattoo Supply, Barber DTS, Tat Soul, Critical Tattoo, Eternal Tattoo, Bishop Tattoo, and Inky's Tattoo Products. So, a lot of the newer tattoo artists that like their pen machines are using Bishop rotaries. Um,
What's
they fall under this.
Do you want to like explain sort of what each company, because they all have sort of specialties, like the one company's primarily chairs.
Chris Hawkins with the $9.99 super chat. Thank you,
Chris?
Yeah, so
An idea.
they're leading brands and businesses that design, manufacture, and market and distribute furniture, equipment, and supplies to professional customers, servicing tattoo, pet grooming, and spa/salon markets. Um,
So if you want to tattoo and groom your dog while putting a what is it? A mud mask?
yeah.
Yeah, we got you.
But
Nexus has got you.
and again, look, this isn't necessarily a bad thing, but I think that the consensus is from a lot of artists out there is there's a concern that it's going to turn into like what Walmart did to mom and pop stores and what Home Depot did to hardware stores or Amazon did to malls.
To everyone.
Because malls at this point are almost like extinct. Uh, we live in an area that used to have, two of the biggest malls in the United States, and now the one, half of it's closed.
Right. It's become housing.
So there's a concern that what's going to wind up happening is that, you know, they're going to wind up putting these smaller guys out of business.
And just as a for instance, when did we go to the North Jersey Tattoo Convention?
Last year,
Last year. So Buck and I went up to North Jersey to a tattoo convention. There were 3 different supply companies there, I think, and none of them had parts for coil machines.
right?
None of them. And I mean, I'm not even talking about tubes. I mean, no, because I mean, I could see a company not wanting to bring tubes
Mhm.
because they're heavy, they're bulky, but no springs, no armature bars. Like, this was mind blowing.
So, because they're a supply chain company, they're basically saying that they're able to handle the logistics of, changes in the market, changes in equipment, and to make the changes quicker where a smaller mom and pop supply company would not be able to make the changes as quick. They're also able to possibly get materials that some of the smaller companies might not be able to get if they were in a pinch. I know that there's, certain artists talk about they get pigments or whatever from so and so. Well, if that person had disappeared or stopped being in business, they would have to hunt for somebody else. Well, because this conglomerate is so big, they have the ability to branch out quickly in an efficient manner, and this is what they're saying. This is why they did that. So it was more about logistics. Uh, Obviously, there's some financial implications, or they wouldn't do it. Okay. No business is going to go into any type of business if they're not going to make money from it.
So do you think the sort of the transfer from mom and pop tattoo supply houses to the larger corporate supply houses is basically the same thing with the homemade needles, homemade springs, homemade coils, when in my generation you could buy all that stuff online.
Mhm.
It's like this thing, so it's like a situation again where old timers can only gripe. Not that I'm an old timer, but we can only gripe so much because guys that came before us, they're as tattooers, they had a much more difficult time.
Right.
Whereas, I was just sending off somewhere.
So it says here, like financially, the acquisition of established entities such as Kingpin Tattoo Supply by Nexus Brand Group.
So Kingpin's in Britain, correct?
I thought they were in the U.S.
So the one place they have is in Britain.
Um, Demonstrates a clear consolidation strategy that involves aggregating market share and pooling resources, which in turn intensifies the competition for smaller tattoo supply companies that often operate with limited scale and narrower financial margins. So, by bulk buying, they're able to make stuff cheaper to sell at a lower, not necessarily lower than a regular supply company, but their costs are significantly lower. So whereas a mom and pop business, their financial margins are much smaller, they're, unable to make changes as quick because of that. With these guys, they're so big that they're able to like, turn on a dime and still continue to make profit. Uh, so smaller tattoo supply companies may experience increased pressure to innovate and adapt in order to maintain competitive pricing and superior service levels. As larger entities under the Nexus umbrella can leverage advanced supply chain technologies and by using digital platforms to achieve reduced operational costs. So essentially, it's the we're trying to muscle them out of the market financially.
Right.
Um,
So, but the downside of this, right, is that, you know, I've known machine builders, and when they were making machines early on, they were making the machine and they were working with it for a week, getting the bugs out, tuning it, like really just getting it up to an optimal level. But then you fast forward 3 years, and now they're making, instead of one machine every week, they're making 10 machines. They're not. They can't put the time in anymore. You're still getting a good machine, but the dialing in process, they don't have time for that anymore. So in a sense, the product is a little. It's not quite as good as it was when it was like a smaller operation.
right. So the other part of this that I kind of found disturbing is that because it's such a big company that they are financially able to pay lobbyists.
Well, and the other thing before we go into the government side of it, what is the industry going to do when Nexus decides that they need to increase their prices by 50%? So a $14 bottle of ink is now $21.
Mhm.
Who's gonna? I mean, if they're the primary supplier,
Right.
who's gonna say boo to them?
Right, well, and that's where, I'm talking about muscling out competition, because once you do that, then you can set the profit.
Right? You can set the price,
So, at
and I
that
don't.
point, there's no you have no other option.
Right?
Now, there are always gonna be, guys that,
Yes.
have been making pigments and whatnot for years, have recipes that it's never gonna impact them. Like, the one of the people that I'm thinking of right off the top of my head is Eric Perfect from Cadillac.
See, the thing, like, I think the biggest concern is the ink because for the machine parts, you can always build. I mean, you can always cut springs if you have,
Right,
like you can. I can make parts for my machine if worse comes to worse,
right,
and I can learn how to solder needles, but I have no idea where to get tattoo pigment.
right.
Yeah.
Yeah, so, one of the questions that came up why Justin and I were hashing this out was, what's the end game? You know, um, there's gonna be some more questions that are gonna come up here, but is the end game really to muscle out the little guy?
Hmm.
I don't know if that's necessarily the case. I think it's just about, "Hey, man, we're gonna make money. We're gonna do this. We're gonna do that." They are very adamant about making sure they're in contact. They have liaisons that are artists, whatnot. I guess the people they sponsor, right? So they're always trying to take in the artists' feedback on whether it's machines or pigments or whatever, um, because they fully understand that the community is historically dependent on that vibe.
Yeah, and goodwill.
Right. They understand that historically it's been tattoo artists that have sold the products, not some outsider that is, got a boatload of cash and decides he wants to start a company.
And and I mean there is resentment.
There's definitely some resentment.
Without a doubt there's resentment.
And look, I'm not gonna sit here and say one thing is better than the other or whatever, because I'm not on that side of the fence. You're somebody that has to buy equipment on a regular. Not necessarily machines and stuff like that, but you have to go get,
I'm out, man. I'm out in like 10 years.
well, but
Yeah.
if it's happening now,
That's the kids, the youngsters are going to have to take care of that.
so I think that that's where some of these artists that came to me and presented this to me,
It's a concern.
it's a concern, and they are saying that it's up to us to fight it.
And the other part of that is like this feeling of why can't they just, there's such a DIY feeling in general in tattooing, especially with my generation. We all came up out of like, not anti-society subcultures, but definitely like outsider subcultures. And why does corporate America now have to like get their hands into our industry? Or something that's very similar to that. That's me buck. Uh, it's something that's with our in our lives is when outside companies began to buy rehabs and treatment centers,
Mhm.
and they were no longer run by people that were in recovery themselves. They were run by larger companies that were investing. And there was, I mean, from my personal experience, there was definitely a depersonalization,
Mhm.
right? Because it was about numbers and it was about making money off the clients.
Right.
They had no interest in actually helping
Well,
people get clean.
so how much of the historical, basis of the supply companies is it, where those guys were like we just talked you just said national. You had to be referred by somebody.
Do I
You
th- do
you
I
know what I
think that
mean?
you could call up Flo or Eddie and be like, "Hey, it's been a hard month," and they'd be like, "We get it," and then they would help you out.
Right.
Yeah, absolutely.
And also the fact that if, back then, if you weren't referred or whatever, you weren't going to get stuff. Now, obviously, Huck Spalding was a little, shaky on that, but
No, Huck would sell to anybody.
so Brandon, we got some people that are actually chiming in on this, so this is great. Brandon Feldman, what's up, man? Good to see you on today.
What's up, brother?
He's the one that has the ironwork shed out in California. He said Nexus is better of the two larger groups.
What's the other group?
BAA is the one that is closer to doing what you're talking about. Uh, one of the main reasons that you're not going to see parts, tubes, and what tattoo artists for the last 25 years have been accustomed to with the supply company is because when these larger groups come in, uh, large groups only want to focus on revenue, not necessarily supporting the artists like the smaller companies will take a loss on items that are necessary, just like you just said, right?
Right.
Uh, Brandon also said Kingpin is in Florida. Barber DTS is the UK company. So we got people chiming in on this already, which is great. Inkzilla, welcome to the show, man. I saw you comment the other day. You said I would love to get you guys to one of my shows this year. We have you guys as guest judges, and he does the fourth. He's doing the fourth annual Tattoos, Booze, and Tacos Fest, May 2nd and to the 4th in Pittsburgh.
Nice. Your hometown.
Yeah, my hometown. But Brandon said they can't turn on a dime at all. That's not happening. So Drag just said, but since the reach in Europe, you can't have your own pigment anymore. So that's kind of where we're going to go next is
So I would be interested, Drag, like how do they enforce that? So like in California here, you cannot register a vehicle in California that uses gasoline anymore. You can drive gasoline powered vehicles in the state. So I could understand where if oversight made it illegal for pigment companies to sell to individuals, but are they going to come into your shop and be like demand to see your pigments? I mean, once a year, the state they're going to show up and do the health inspection, but
right.
an not entrepreneurially tattoo artist, some tattoo artists would just switch it out. You know,
Right on. And then Bill O'Connell said I went to an all-female tattoo convention in Orlando, Florida in 1997. I think it was 42 female artists from around the world. I got a piece done by Carrie Barba and Jennifer Billing. Right on. So I think that one of the other concerns is, from what I understood from the different artists that talked to me about this, is the fact that these bigger companies are going on the political angle as well. They have lobbyists that have deep pockets that can go and push for reforms and whatnot. Um, Sometimes those things could actually benefit the company.
so as an example, on a much smaller scale, there's the Alliance of Professional Tattooers, and when New Jersey wanted to codify its tattoo regulations, they went to the Alliance, the APT. Now that was comprised of guys that already had shops, and they wrote into the code that they were grandfathered in, right? They had existing shops, but the new guy, they wrote it in such a way that they increased the shop costs, just the operating costs, by a certain percentage, and definitely the building costs,
Mhm.
right? And it was a move to frustrate new shops from opening.
Okay.
But you couch it, which I'm sure the federal government is going to couch it. We're just protecting your health.
Well, it's funny you say that because
We're just protecting the cameras are for your safety.
they're saying that maintaining high standards of regulatory compliance is a persistent challenge that smaller tattoo supply companies face in the wake of Nexus Supply Industries' influence. Although the tattoo ink sector is technically categorized as a cosmetic product under the U.S. Food and Drug Administration guidelines, the relative
Laxity.
laxity of regulatory oversight has not diminished the need for adherence to strict safety protocols and standards. So, what I'm taking from that is that they're already going and pushing to the government
Yeah.
for creating standards, and which, look, that's not necessarily a bad thing. You wanna make sure that, people are not selling stuff that could potentially
Right.
cause a problem. We had that episode, a couple months ago.
Amazon should get out of the ink business.
Exactly, where the people were buying stuff from Amazon, and it was making people sick or whatever, right?
Timu. Yeah.
Or Temu, that's what it was.
Yeah.
And so, look, there's some of these things need to be done, but there's also things that don't need to be done that's gonna try to steer everything in your direction.
Absolutely.
One of the concerns that was brought up to me was the fact that they were gonna try to push out coil machines, that the the new pens are, um, more sanitary, more this, more that. I don't know the depth of that conversation, but that's kinda how it was pushed towards me. It was more of like, "Hey, look, don't push us out because this is what we choose to do because you sell that product."
And and honestly, I mean, I can clean every centimeter of a coil machine in between each tattoo. Just take some, mat aside and a good paper towel. I can get everywhere on there.
Mhm.
Now, with a pen, right, there is ink buildup in the pen. That's why they put the plastic pieces in there,
Mhm.
but they are not foolproof.
Right.
Yeah. So the idea that they're completely,
Sanitary.
yeah, that's not true.
Well, I've actually seen, Instagram reels or shorts that have posted where people took apart those pens
Hmm.
and there was stuff caked in underneath
Absolutely.
that, well, I guess, might or might not be doing to clean properly. So to say that it's, "Hey, man, this is more of a sterile process," or
That's ridiculous.
not sterile, but a cleaner process than this, it's, to me, it just doesn't make sense, but, um, this is your world, you are the tattoo artist, so you would be more apt to tell me that, what's right and what's not.
So at one point in tattooing, uh, so an irrigation bottle is the bottle that has the spout on top of it. And everybody decided that spray bottles, when they came into contact with a tattoo that was being done, it was pushing blood molecules into the air, right? So suddenly we had to start using irrigation bottles,
Right.
and I got to say that's I mean, I guess on a scientific level, yeah, there's blood molecules in the air, but like, come on, come
So,
on.
we got some really good comments that are coming in about this, which is great. So Inkzilla said, here in PA, here in Pittsburgh, we have no tattoo registrations and health department never comes. I wonder if that will start to change.
It's a
Yes.
commonwealth. Nope,
You don't think?
it's a commonwealth.
But if these bigger companies start pushing for legislation, it's possible.
I mean,
I'm just trying to be the devil's
right.
advocate.
In general Pennsylvania, we have more rights.
Mhm.
It's a commonwealth.
He said in the past 17 years of tattooing, we have never had anyone stop in health department or other.
Don't jinx it.
Yeah, don't jinx it, dude. Better be knocking on some wood over there out in Pittsburgh. um, so Drag said, yeah, he's talking about Spain. Yes, they control pigments since 2022. We only can use reach conform pigments and blacks. They have to pass the new regulations. I'm not sure what he was trying to say there. Sorry, Drag does his best to speak English for us. It's his second language. Yeah, so
And I think that there was a push in Europe too for single use foil packs with the ink.
okay.
Like no more bottles.
So Brandon just said, so he's kind of backing up what we're saying, but he was saying it's the other company, not Nexus. Narrative of BAA is to push out coils. So there you go. This is firsthand knowledge here. The reason a pen is better is because the pens can be mass produced in China without a problem. Not better, but better for larger companies.
Absolutely.
So there you go, man. It's about the bottom dollar.
And I mean, and the other thing about the pens, right? RC brought this up. I mean, if my machine breaks mid tattoo, I can get it up and running again in 5 minutes.
Right.
If your pen breaks, that requires sending it back.
So like if you don't have another pen, you're hooped.
Yeah.
Sorry, you got to come back, next week and I can finish this.
Yeah. Considering that some of them are what, $800, $1,000, $1,200.
I know they're pretty expensive. So Fat Cracker chimed in. What's up, Fat Cracker? Supply companies are all going corporate, but what about tattoo shops? Outside of the one company in Vegas, I'm surprised we haven't yet seen the McDonald's of tattoo shops in larger urban areas.
So, for instance, in this area of Pennsylvania, there's a tattoo shop, I think that's out of Reading or Allentown, that at this point has 6 or 8 locations that are spread all over Southeast Pennsylvania. And then I talked to a tattooer that was working in Delaware, and he said there's another chain. Like it's not McDonald's yet, but it's definitely like investors, pushing out new tattoo shops.
Yeah, so we talked about it where they have the tattoo shops in the military base now.
Mm-hmm.
That's a corporation. So that's a company that's actually putting in tattoo shops on military bases. There's I think 6 or 7 now. So that is going down that path that you're talking about, Fat Cracker, whereas, it's not, the McDonald's of tattooing.
Not yet.
But they're starting to lay the foundation for that. You know what I mean? So, so APT, yeah, Bill O'Connell just said, "Hey, Justin, the Alliance of Professional Tattooists started in '92,
of which I am a member."
He said he believed it was Shotzi Gorman, but APT was started by Mick Beasley, and
his wife tattooed me.
I've been a supporting member since 1994. Try to keep the tattooing safe and professional.
No, I mean definitely. I mean, I took the courses and stuff. I just mean I'm not saying the APT as a whole put the regulations in place to make it more difficult to open a tattoo shop. Just whoever was the AP rep in Jersey.
Right.
And I don't think it was Shotzi. It was one of the other North Jersey guys, which really, I mean, was sort of a smart business move.
Okay.
Right? If you could open, if he spent $2,000 to open his shop, but required new build shops to spend 12. I mean, at one point in New Jersey, you needed to have private rooms for all tattooers, which like is really dangerous. I mean, if you're working in the 3rd private room and you don't have anybody up at the counter,
somebody could literally come in and rob you.
Right. I mean, it's dangerous.
Okay. So Bill and Brandon are going back about Shotzi. Bill thinks that Shotzi was possibly the first president of the APT.
That sounds right.
So Yeah. Stephen Street, what's up, man?
Sure.
There have been issues in the EU over pigments, yet in Portugal, as an example, I don't recall it ever being that strict. Perfectly hygienic practices going on, though.
See, in the end, the other ridiculous part of this is that tattoo shops medically are considered clean environments. Like, you have to be in an operating theater, scrubbing in, not touching your gloves, having your gloves put on you, having your gown put on you, for it to be a genuinely sterile environment. Not sterile equipment. We use sterile equipment, but you can't get a storefront. It's just medically clean because it's not a sealed. Uh, what do they call it when it's a sealed environment? There's a name for it, and I can't think of it off the top of my head.
Okay. So Inkzilla said we've had an influx of non-tattooer shop owners popping up here. They just give each one different names to not seem like the McDonald's of shops. And then Brandon just said basically how I was going to round this whole conversation out, which is awesome, dude. Thank you so much for putting this up. I just threw it up on screen so everybody else can see it. The main theme of this should be tattoo artists or tattooers need to really support who supports them. Know the facts and know who is actually giving back to tattooing. If not, we will lose it.
See,
Could have not said it any better, dude.
I mean, I buy equipment from people that only sell to uh, licensed tattoo shops.
Mm-hmm.
That's just a personal choice of mine.
Right.
Yeah. And is it a little bit more expensive? Yeah.
Yeah, because you know what? And first of all, I mean, I know that, right? But I remember the one day that you were in the middle of something and you were like, "Oh man, I got to get." It was like a yellow or something, and I was like, "Dude, you want me to go run up? I'll go run up to the shop, to the supply
Yeah.
place for you, and grab it." And you were like, "Nah, you know,
Yeah. I'll order it.
right?" Because anybody can't just walk in there and grab stuff. Um, so you know, So Brandon just said, I have a lot to say about all this. I sold a company in 2019 to BAA and I saw what was behind the curtain. I was able to buy it back and leave because I could not take it anymore. So there you go, Brandon. Brandon out there fighting the good fight.
So I was talking to Jerry Reds years and years ago. He tattooed in Philly. I think he still tattoos in Philly, but he started in the 70s, I think.
Hmm.
And we were talking about Ink Master.
Okay.
And he said the biggest detriment to Ink Master is that before that, they didn't know how much money we made. But the Ink Master generated enough interest from the powers that be to where they began to check. And when I looked into it, right, so what the IRS does, like with restaurants, for instance, they know that to make this many dinners, this many steak dinners, you have to buy this amount of steak,
Hmm.
right? And they understand the prices and stuff.
Yeah, they call it covers.
Covers. Now, I did a tattoo today,
Hmm.
right? I used X amount of equipment. Was it a $50 tattoo or a $1,000 tattoo? And if it's a cash only business, they had no idea of how to uh,
Get their cut.
get their cut. Yeah.
Yeah, for sure.
But then, as tattooing has become more popular, they've become more interested in that side of things.
Yeah. Well, I think that, as I dug further and further into this, the only part that, again, look, I'm not a tattoo artist, so I really don't have any say in this. But I think Brandon said it perfectly that the only way that you guys are going to be able to fight this is by tattoo artists joining together and fighting it. The thing that bothered me the most was the fact that they have lobbyists that are there to push government politics onto it. Um, whether it be regulations or, other types of things that they can like kind of hold you guys down. And
So
if tattoo artists aren't joined together to combat that, they have deep enough pockets that you'll never overcome that.
so two things, right? I'll always be able to get pigments,
Okay.
right? Regardless, I'll always be able to get pigments. Most tattooers will always be able to get pigments. And you know, to you, but also to the people watching, if it was driven underground again, if like working with coil machines was made outlaw and we had to like, you know, go underground again, would that be the worst thing in the world?
Well, it kind of brings up the conversation that you and I have had on multiple occasions, man. Um, is tattooing ever going to get to a point where we have younger generation people that you look at them in their 20s, right? They're not drinking and smoking
Right.
because they're like, you know what? I saw my aunts, my uncles, my parents, getting drunk or whatever, and I don't want to do that. I don't want to be like them. So then there's going to be the younger generation that has aunts, uncles, parents that are covered in tattoos, and they're going to be, that's not cool anymore. I don't want to be tattooed. So is tattooing actually going to wind up going back into the underground, so to speak, where it's not the cool hip thing to do anymore? And this is nobody's ever going to be able to answer this question, but Justin and I kick this around a lot.
So I know, I mean, I have friends that are tattooers that would look, say that they would look forward to that, that it adds a quality to tattooing. But I don't know if tattooing is ever going to be able, I think sooner or later it's going to ebb, but I don't think it's ever going to be something that isn't done anymore.
Yeah, no, it's never going to disappear, but do you think it's possibly hit its peak?
I
It's
don't
capped
know.
out.
Maybe.
I don't know. I mean, that's just one of those questions that it's a theoretical question, right? Never going to be able to answer it.
I mean, I would talk about the industry being, because there is a difference between the industry and the culture, right? Those are two completely separate things. Like, then you get into questions of like industry saturation. Like, if tattooing is now that available,
Mhm.
like, I mean, you remember when you had to drive,
Yeah, you had to go somewhere to get a tattoo.
right?
Yep. I mean, I grew up in Western PA. There was no tattoo shops in my town. That's why, um, I wound up going to Williamsport where I was going to school
Hmm.
and getting a tattoo because at the time there was none where I lived. Um, so Inkzilla said we're also lucky to have a handful of tattoo owned uh, smaller supply shops here, so we rarely need to rely on big box suppliers. Brandon just said there is a place for tattoo artists and tattoo lovers to live in shops and in supplies. But the main thing is for the folks involved to love it and care. Um, that has to be the main factor.
I agree.
I agree with that 100%. And Brandon also said, I would like the underground, but right now it's hot and getting hotter. But there are too many folks trying to get in, and a lot don't understand it. Well, you go first because you are the tattoo artist. I'm just the enthusiast.
Well, can we put on a petition that Buck stops saying that dumb shit, right?
Well, no, I mean,
No, he's a tattoo. Like, can we all agree that Buck is allowed to have an opinion? That he's heavily tattooed.
well,
Give him shout outs in the comments.
I'm just saying.
So what are you asking?
So that it's getting hotter, but there are too many folks trying to get in that don't understand it.
Yes,
Right.
right. Because in the end, if you're 20, um, you don't have as much life experience. Like when I was 20, I thought 40 was old.
When I was 20, I thought I knew everything,
Right.
and I didn't know jack shit.
So, like, interestingly enough, guy came into the shop the other day. He had a tattoo from Jack Dracula from 19. I think we figured out that it was 52 years old,
Wow. Okay.
and it was a skeleton.
What did it was it? What did it look like?
So it was a skeleton on a motorcycle.
Okay.
It was blurry,
Yeah.
but
Like all blowed out.
it was, yeah.
Okay.
But in Jack's defense, right, there was still green in the eyes.
Okay.
5 decades later, there was still green in the eyes. And, like, if you're 20 years old, you can't at 20 years old, I couldn't appreciate. I mean, I could understand intellectually, well, that thing is 50 years old, but I couldn't appreciate it the way I can now at 53.
Right. So my stance on that comment is that that is probably one of the main reasons why I wanted to do this channel. Um, I've been lucky enough to be around different tattoo artists. Justin and I are best friends. Um, we, I always loved history, always loved World War II history. So for me, it was, you know what, man, I really started to get into these different artists, Justin, talking about old school history stuff. And to me, that's why I wanted to do this channel, man, was because I loved it enough that I thought it was worthy of bringing to the light. I didn't feel like there was enough history represented on YouTube or social media. You have different museums and whatnot that are out there that are doing their thing, whether it's Instagram or Facebook or whatever. But I felt like, to me, it was a cool idea to do videos on, certain artists and get the information out about them, hoping that there would be people that are the younger generation that would understand the history of it and the traditions of it. Me coming from the motorcycle world, where traditions and history is the foundation of it.
Right.
So I feel like that needs to be presented here, and that's why I started this channel.
And I think part of the difficulty we face in the channel is that we're not tattooing people and telling them what voltage our machine is at and what kind of needle we're using. Like, we're not giving tattoo instruction. So uh, there's a whole group of tattoo artists that are just going to blow past this because there are guys that are giving like explicit instruction on YouTube.
Yeah, I was just laughing because I was reading some of the comments.
What did the people say?
So yes for Buck speaking his mind, and Brandon in capital letters. So he was shouting. He said, "Buck, you care and love it. Stop saying that." All right. Opinion away. Stephen Street said, "Opinion away. Tattooists and tattooers. Tattoos or tattooees." So Brandon said, "I will say this: if tattooing is really big and the industry is getting bigger, but lost of artists are slow. Lots of artists are slow." He put lost, but there are millions being made by big groups. There is a deficit, and that is due to supply chains not putting it back into the industry that needs to be noticed.
I mean, and also the other part of that too is that if I want to spend $2,000 on shirts, right, that is a planned financial move. If I want to get a nice convention banner made, if I want to do promotional stuff, if I want to, what do you call with the ads where you boost the ads, all that stuff costs money,
Right.
and there's definitely people in the tattoo business now who a $30,000 investment, a $50,000 investment is just it's an investment to them. Like if I wanted to redo the shop, fix replace the floor, the ceiling tiles, and repaint. I mean, that's thousands and thousands of dollars, which not every mom and pop is going to have the ability to do.
Right. So Fat Cracker said, "What other service/product thing
Mm.
do you know that has been called a fad in American culture in over
Mm.
100 years? Stop talking about tattooing as a fad." So he's not talking to us.
Oh,
He's just saying in general, there's people that talk that.
so interestingly enough, the pet rock. The guy created the pet rock in the 70s. It was only a fad for 6 months. He made something like $1.6 million
For a rock.
selling rocks.
So
And not that kind of rock, which you can make $1.6 million in like a couple months.
As we wrap this up, I want to say that I'm working with a couple different tattoo artists. We have one officially now in California that is willing to work with us. What we're going to do is we're going to have episodes that I do personally or stuff that we talk about here on the show. Um, let's say we do I do an episode on Coleman. We have an artist in California
and in Pennsylvania.
Buddha at Spotlight, who's willing to do 20% off a tattoo if we give a secret code out on that episode or our live stream. So we're looking for other tattoo artists that would like to participate in this. Reach out to me at info tattoosinreview at gmail.com. Let me know, and maybe we'll try to work you into it as well. But I thought it would be really cool to have that. Justin said he'd be willing to partake in that as well. So we're looking for artists all across the country, possibly other countries that would be interested in doing that. Where if we give out a special code during the episode or live stream, you'll get 20% off by mentioning that you saw the code on the show or the episode. So reach out, info tattoosinreview at gmail.com, and let us know if you'd like to take part in that. So we're going to keep rolling with the history, folks. I have some stuff lined up that I'm working on right now. I'm wrapping up my research right now on something that I think is going to be pretty cool. So we'll see what happens.
Now that was a concise explanation on research.
Because I don't want to give it away.
Research on some. Yeah, I'm researching something.
But yeah, because I don't want to give it away.
No, I understand why.
Tune in and watch. It's tough sometimes, man, where you have 2 videos in a row that really didn't get a lot of views, and I put a lot of effort into doing them, and it sucks. Like it sucks for not only the artist that happened to, but it sucks for Tattoo Tony with that museum thing. That museum took 40 years for him of collecting stuff to put together. And I come in and swing in there and I try to put together an episode, and it just doesn't get a lot of views. And it's
not yet.
So I mean, hopefully it will one day. But it's tough sometimes where you're like, man, all right, I got to buckle up and do my research and get this next video out. But
So just real quick, I have a catalog from a company. I think it's called Tat Daddy, and I do not know if their products were good, but their catalog was definitely the prettiest catalog ever made, maybe outside of the H2O Ocean catalog, which was another nice catalog.
Yeah, but you only liked it because it's
yes,
front to back with half-clad women. Had nothing to do with the product.
Yeah, nothing to do with the product at all. So maybe
no, we can't show that catalog on this show.
No, I'm not saying we should. I'm just saying that maybe when you're doing like Tattoo Tony's museum, just
have scantily clad woman walk across.
Just
dude, we have women that listen to this show. We have our moderator. We got our got Sarah.
Like literally for no reason.
Lauren. We can't just have women, man. There's got to be dudes too.
Right.
I'm not about to do that. No, thank you.
We can just have women.
Let some other channel out there do that. I don't need to be seeing that. Bill O'Connell said, "Love the show and what you're doing, spreading the history and keeping it real. Much love and respect to both of you and to all the listeners here. Love live and love tattoos. Live and love tattoos." Sorry, dude. My contact is bugging out. Brandon said, "Make catalogs great again." We weren't even sure if that company was still open, right?
No.
I tell you what, it was a nice looking catalog.
It was a nice looking catalog.
For sure. But all right, everybody, have a safe, happy week. If you're celebrating St. Patty's Day tonight or tomorrow, because tomorrow's officially the day, please be safe. If you're too drunk to drive, please call a friend or get a cab. Don't risk somebody else's life. And I'll get off my soapbox now and say, have a great night, all.
Sláinte.